Hi friends, I'm Liz.
I'm Robby, and welcome back to Bookworm Couple.
There it is, you got it.
Today we're going to be talking about Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief, which I have read before, not for probably close to 10 years.
I've never read. Ever. And I've never even seen the movies. I've only seen like...
Oh, well that's okay. The movies are really awful.
I'm coming in with my general knowledge of it. I don't have any biases.
Okay.
How about that?
Cool. You are the person who's reading it for the first time. Why don't you give a, kind of overview of, spoiler-free, we hope,
I'll try.
Overview of the book.
Okay.
Like, as short as you can, the very basics.
Percy Jackson, preteen, living in New York City, finds out he's a demigod, goes on a quest to the underworld to find some things that were stolen. All kinds of kerfuffle happens, craziness, and then are they successful or are they not? You'll have to read to find out. How'd I do?
That was better. That was way better. I gotta say, if this makes it into the video, we've now spent about like 8 minutes of her giving out every detail of the story.
4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay. No, I think that was pretty good. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a story about a kid who lives in New York who finds out he's a demigod and has to go on a quest to save the world.
Wow, that was good.
There we go.
Look at him.
Yeah, so did you like it?
Oh, I loved it. I
Great.
think had 13-year-old Liz read it, she would have been obsessed with the series. And not that I'm not obsessed now, but like I am like going back to my inner teen and realizing how much I would have loved this, because I always found like gods and god systems interesting, especially history of like ancient lore and Zeus and Hades and Persephone and Athena and all of those people. Like I always found that very fascinating, but never delved into it beyond history class. So I would have absolutely adored this as a young teen. But then as an adult, it's really fun and freeing to read something like this, I think, with very low stakes, very easy read. And I will say, I was hooked. Like, I had a hard time putting it down after a certain point in the book. I was like, really needed to know. Even though, like, you can kind of guess what's going to happen, or like you can kind of hope, knowing that there's multiple books in the series.
I mean, you were saying possible spoilers, by the way. We should put that in. Possible spoilers. We don't know. We're kind of just talking about this book, so we may have spoilers, we may not. This book has been out for a long time. If you haven't read it yet, just stop the video. Go read it. It's also not long.
No, it's what, like 250 pages?
250 pages, something
maybe?
like that.
Yeah. Which is, again, like, I haven't read a book in, like, what would you call this? Like, young, not quite young adult.
Not quite young adult.
Like preteen.
Middle grade, something like that.
Middle grade, there you go. I haven't read a book in that genre in a very, very long time, and so I kind of went in assuming I was either going to read it very fast or, like, I was not going to find a common language in it, and I really loved it, and I found myself, like, turning page after page after page.
You know, it's interesting. So you just came from reading Eye of the World, which has a very different style, let's say, than this. So I was curious how you would react. Did you find because it's, as all middle grade books are, the protagonists generally are, teens or preteens. But the author is not. So it is an older person trying to sound like a kid, which some people can find grating. So you coming from Wheel of Time, which is very, very different, very, very much not that. Did you find it annoying at all, or did you just find it much easier to read, or how did you feel about it?
I discovered my love of reading probably about like 11, 12, 13. And so reading books like that felt very nostalgic. It was so I enjoyed the language. It was much easier to read. It did take me a minute to kind of get in the headspace of the book after coming from such an elevated text, but I really, really enjoyed it and found that it was very easy to read. I think there were just a few things that, like, I kind of did one of those too, because I was like, okay. Like, I had said to you, the naming of the chapters being, like, really cheesy. Yeah. And I remember that from being, like, a teen and preteen and thinking that was so funny. And now I looked at it, but then when I first looked at it, I kind of went, oh, okay. And then I was like, wait, like, go back. Be that kid again. Like, that's funny. It's funny. It kind of took me out of it at first. I was like, oh, yeah, I remember this. Yeah, funny. But eventually, as I got into it, I think it made me giggle and allowed me to go back to, like, that preteen, which is why we read in the beginning, in the first place, at least for me, is to escape, is to live in another world, and why not go to that world of my own remembering, my healing my inner teen, I suppose.
How did you feel about the main crew, like Percy, Annabeth, and Grover?
I thought it was a great like big three trio, because you had everything you needed. You had like Percy being the guy, like gotta do the things, like a little bit like, oh, what? Not me. And then you had Annabeth, who classic powerful chick being like, nah, I got this, I'm taking care of everything, y'all are a bunch of idiots. And then Grover is just like your goofy class clown, kind of always the butt of the joke. I thought it was a really fun trio.
Yeah.
I also really loved Annabeth, but of course, young, independent woman Liz is like, I would have I would have loved that character to be like, give me a book from her perspective, because I can relate to her more.
Yeah. You will be seeing a ton of her, so don't worry about that.
I love her.
She's around.
Do we name her future daughter?
Nope. It's been a while since I've read these, and I wasn't sure what to expect going back into it. I've read a lot of other books in the meantime. Back when I was reading this, it was much more of a, I want something that I'm going to move through quickly, something that it's just going to be pure escapism, and that's great. And so I was curious to see how I was going to feel about it coming back, and I still love it.
Did you take anything different from it this time?
Yeah, it's way more violent than
It is! It really is violent!
It's really, that's not something that really,
Some head chopping.
not something I really, I guess, ever thought about at all as when I was reading it originally, but reading it now, there are some hyper-violent things that happen, which just kind of made us like, whoa!
Yeah.
Like, spoilers, him chopping off the stretcher guy's head.
Like
completely
brutally.
decapitating him.
I think Percy has a switch. He's got a like 0 to demigod switch.
Of course, well, the justification,
like anger.
Yeah, well, the justification is, he is fighting for his life, and
that's true.
They do a good job immediately of being like, there is a clear line between hurting humans, which they never do, really, at least in this book, and monsters. And monsters also don't really die. They come back, which I think does soften it a little bit, but then at the end, his mother does completely murder his stepfather.
Spoiler!
Which is crazy.
Which, thank God.
But he is the worst, and I totally forgot about the bit where Percy, realizes that he beat his mother, and I was like, this is heavy.
Yeah. Well, I thought there were quite a few, decently adult themes, but kind of under the radar. The fact that we just constantly are talking about how these gods have all of these relationships and all of these kids, and nobody really ever is there's no moral compass to it, and there's not even a explanation of they're Greek, or they're gods. I thought that was really interesting, especially thinking in the timing that it came out, that that would have been okay, I don't know, but I also went to Catholic school, so there's the little me thinking of somebody would have earmarked that I
probably
was around as a younger person, but also that's what at least I at that age thought I was mature enough to handle that kind of stuff, so maybe we just need to have more faith in our little teens.
Could be. There's really no way for me to work around that in my mind, because I know enough about Greek mythology that I know that all of the gods are just constantly sleeping around.
Well, of course, and same. But I think me coming at it with my background and looking at that for tweens, I was like, nobody's really talking about this. Okay. I mean, I'm fine with it.
You know what else that I thought was kind of interesting? They talked about the big three and how they made a pact after World War II that they wouldn't have any more kids. Mm-hmm. And the reason that they did that is because they said World War II was essentially the children of Zeus and Poseidon versus the children of Hades, which basically indirectly implies that Hades is a Nazi. Or at least his kids are Nazis, which is also bad.
I recently read a series that was a retelling of Hades and Persephone. It's called Touch of Darkness, which maybe we can get into that eventually. Again, knowing that we both love mythology, it was a retelling of Hades and Persephone, and I'm very much on Team Hades since then. So I know this is a different retelling and all the things, and that was fictional, but
he does get
Hades is a okay guy.
He does get the short end of the stick. So
always.
That's true. You won't really be able to speak to this because you haven't read any of the other books yet, but I was kind of shocked by how much foreshadowing there is for stuff that is going to happen in future books, which I didn't really expect. I could be wrong here, but to me it seems like Rick Riordan, I'm probably butchering that name, who's the author, must do a decent amount of planning for his books, because there are things that are happening in at least the next 2 or 3 books that are kind of hinted at here, which I was really interested in and impressed with. And also started making me remember, different things that happened in the series that I had forgotten. So I had a lot of fun with that, which I think you will notice when you start reading the next books.
Fascinating. Did you feel like this was a faster read for you? Maybe just where you're at in your life?
Honestly, no. And that's actually why I was a little, I don't want to say disappointed, but I didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to, because I loved these books when I first read them, even though I was older than the target audience for them. But this book took me longer to read than I thought. I thought I was going to finish it in like a day or two, and it took me over a week. Because I don't know if that's just because I was busy or if it just didn't draw me in as much as I was expecting it to. I did have very high expectations going in, so maybe that's part of it. Also, I think there's a lot to be said for, like, you went from Eye of the World to this. So something that's a little bit more dense, and suddenly you're reading a middle grade book, it's like someone has taken a weight off your legs and you can sprint. Whereas I went from Throne of Glass to this, which, while not a middle grade book by any means, I would say the prose in Throne of Glass is much closer to Percy Jackson than the prose in Eye of the World is to Percy Jackson. And so I don't, there wasn't any sense of like, this is way easier to read.
Yeah,
at least
that's
to me.
fair. That's fair.
But I still loved it. But
who's your favorite character?
Who is my favorite character? It's a really good question. I really like Grover this time around.
Yeah, he's
Big
great.
fan. He's really
great.
Cute. I want him to succeed.
Yeah.
His story I find to be quite touching, and there's not a ton that. It's obviously Percy is the POV character, and so we spend as much time with him as possible. But the hints that we get at of Grover and the struggles that he has had so far in his life, I really liked this time. I think I kind of blew past. I know that I loved Percy in past readings. I did really like Luke when I first read it.
I knew it from the beginning that he was a bad guy. That's a spoiler.
I would ask who your favorite character is.
I literally called it from the beginning.
Okay.
I did.
I had to see every time she was reading, she's like, Luke is bad, and I had to be like, I don't know, maybe.
This guy.
Why do you think that?
I read too much fantasy to not know when there's a suspicious character.
I did like Luke. I also love Ares. I think this version of Ares is
with the
so
duster,
funny.
like Matrix
with
Ares?
With the duster and the
leather duster.
The motorcycle that has like a shotgun holster in it, and him talking about how this is the greatest country since Sparta, which is depressing and yet also hilarious.
Just very funny. Very funny.
I thought that he was very funny. I like the way that they personified really all of the gods. Zeus is kind of the worst. Yeah. He's just like stuck up and annoying. Frat boy. Poseidon, I do love Poseidon as like a beach bum.
Yeah, like
That's
Jimmy
very
Buffett.
Funny. Yeah, and he gets lots of points when he calls Sally Jackson a queen. I was like, yes,
Sally Jackson.
She absolutely is a queen. Yeah. We love Sally.
I'm ready for them to reunite. I'm like very ready for them to reunite. We'll see.
I would ask who your favorite character is, but I'm assuming it's Annabeth.
It's Annabeth for sure.
Yeah.
I love her.
Yeah, I thought that overall I really enjoyed the book. Maybe not as much as I did when I was a little bit younger, but I still think it's a great read. I love the setting. I think the world building also is unbelievably smart and pretty succinct. I thought at a certain point...
the character building as well.
Yeah, I thought at a certain point when they were like the Vegas stopover and also why are there so many waterbed references? But the waterbed place.
I guess of the time.
There are certain time capsules like So Yesterday by Hilary Duff. That as millennials, I was just like, this is unreal.
Shows you exactly when it was written.
I know exactly when this was written. There was a point where I was like, every time you stop, there has to be some sort of monster or god. I was just like, okay. Like
they told them it was going to be Card.
I know, but it just seemed like they couldn't find just a random motel by the side of the road ever.
Yeah, well, motels are suspicious.
Okay, fine. But I really thought that, especially in the beginning, because I kind of forgot the justification for some of how the world works, and it's so succinct, and I think it's so good, just so well written, because it's literally just like a paragraph where he says the gods have moved with the heart of the Western world, and so now that's New York City. And I was like, I don't need to know anything more, and I think that's brilliant. It's very understandable for someone of any age.
I'm a Pisces, I'm a water gal. I loved that Percy's power is like enacted by water. Is that the right word?
Sure.
Maybe not. It like, so anytime he's like touching like a puddle or anything, he
Yeah.
has like so much power over that, like, because that's like his domain. I thought that was really cool, and I thought they did a really good job of like justifying each different type of, I don't know, you can call it magic. Would it be magic?
Yeah.
I guess magic. Like classifying each gods and goddesses magic was really interesting.
Yeah.
I love a theme, so I like that we like kept that very on theme, and I thought that was really, really cool and empowering for the characters.
Yeah.
Too.
I think it's interesting that, like, I feel like everything around this time that was written had, like, a way to sort yourself.
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah, so, like, which cabin are you? You know, that whole thing.
I would like to think I was Athena, but I think I'm more Poseidon.
Okay. I mean, that's still good.
I would like to be a cross between the two.
Sure.
Maybe a little Aphrodite thrown in there.
I mean, but then that would make you a full god. A minor
Sure.
god, to be sure, but a god.
Great.
So,
Okay.
how would you rate this book?
Okay, I'm rating this.
And what are we using to rate it?
We're gonna use tridents.
Tridents. How many tridents would you give this book
Out of 5.
Out of 5.
Out of
How many?
5.
How many?
I'm going back and forth my rating because I just feel like I'm very easily entertained, and so I have a hard time rating things. So I'm like, I loved it. So generally I loved it, but I'm kind of giving this a rating knowing that I think I'm going to get into this series more, and I'm hoping that my ratings will up from there. I'm gonna give it a 3.75 tridents out of 5.
We're going so
because I was gonna say 3.5 and then I felt bad.
Why did you feel bad? 3 is average. 3 is good.
Is it really?
I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at it, but to me, like, a 1 is something so bad that I'm probably not going to finish. A 2 is a book that I finished but really didn't like. A 3 is fine. 3 is average. A 4 is something I like, and a 5 is amazing, or a book that I think everyone should read, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how I think about it.
I think my ratings, my system, my internal system for ratings is probably going to change the more of these that we do, because I always have guilt. Like, I don't want to I want to give everyone a 5, you know, because this just feels good.
Okay, yeah, but...
Okay, but realistically, I would give this a 3.5 tridents out of 5.
Can we make a rule right now?
You're not going to do 0.5.
No, we can do 0.5s. Can we not do 0.75? Can we not do any smaller thing than a 0.5?
Fine. A half. We'll do only half ratings.
Fine, great.
Do your rating. Go.
I'm going to give it a 4. I really like this book.
A 4 what?
A 4, a 4 out of 5 tridents.
There it is.
Jeez.
Play the game.
Okay. Yeah, I really like this book. You know, if I had liked it as much as I was expecting it to, I would have given it a 5. Nostalgia tells me that I should give it a 5, but I didn't. I found it very entertaining, but there were a few things that that didn't grip me as much as they did on the first time, but that doesn't mean I didn't still love the book. So, yeah, 4. I feel good about a 4.
Solid.
Yeah.
We liked it. We're going to continue reading it.
Would you keep reading this if it wasn't for this channel?
Yes. But I also have wanted to read this series for a very long time.
Sure.
So I'm like reading this for my preteen self, knowing that she would have loved it, and I'm enjoying it now. And also wanting to have more, I very much get into the rut of reading the same thing. Mm-hmm. He makes fun of me because all of the titles sound the same. They have a similar rhythm. Because I like it, and I know what it is, and I enjoy every second of it. So I definitely would, just to like keep things moving, to have a different genre and a different vibe.
Sure.
Different perspective too. Again, I very rarely read things written by men, so.
Which is wild because this entire genre is unfairly dominated by white men. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, but now we're in the era that I think that is very much shifting.
Yeah, which is great.
In the modern era.
Yes.
What about you?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I've already read the whole series. I've read all 5 of these. I've read. There's a sequel series to this that I'm now forgetting the name of, maybe The Last Olympians or something, that I've also read all of. I've also read I've read a lot of these series. I very much liked them. Thank you. And yeah, so obviously, yes, I would, and I'm very excited to keep going, and get farther along in the series and rediscover some of my favorite parts that I may have forgotten.
Yeah, and I'll find new ones because I've never read them.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on our next adventure.